I think I'm just very, very clear on my values. And if anything ever feels out of alignment, there's a reason for it. And you have to listen to your intuition at that point and your heart. And I just knew myself so well. I was like, why would I put myself through this for 5-10 more years? Yes, I just got a raise. Yes, it looked great on paper. But if I'm not happy, that means everybody else around me is not going to be happy because I'm going to bring them down. And it's just, life's too short to be spending time that way. Plus, I guess I really viewed it as an opportunity to go, okay, well, maybe this is a springboard that you need to finally start your own business, even though I didn't know what that was. And my other thing behind it was, yeah, I'm a little bit of a risk taker for sure, but what's the worst that could happen? I might end up back in a job. But if I don't try, then I'll never know. So it didn't feel like there was actually so much risk in leaving, because the very worst thing, I could have just said, yeah, I went traveling during that time and now I want a new job. So it just, yeah, I think it was very, very aligned with my values to never, ever, ever not be happy and doing fulfilling work.
This is episode 47 of the Ownstream Podcast, featuring Natalie Sisson.
Welcome to the Ownstream Podcast. I'm Teresa Scoba.
And I'm Stephen Shelley.
And we just hung up with Natalie Sisson, and wow, what an amazing story she has. You know, we talk a little bit about this in the conversation, but Stephen and I remember listening to her podcast, The Suitcase Entrepreneur, great name.
Great name.
Maybe like, what was it, 3 to 4 years ago when we were traveling through Asia and kind of dreaming about, Stephen had at the time an online business, but creating our own thing, much like what we have created with Ownstream. And we're listening to a number of podcasts about location independence, living your passion, creating an online business. And we're listening to Natalie. So this is really a treat to talk to her. And Natalie, you know, what an amazing life she's living. She left a corporate job about, she says, 10 years ago, almost exactly, and became an entrepreneur and really strongly listened. She just we talk a lot on this podcast about listening to that voice inside you that's like, you got to be doing something else. You know, there's a call, there's a resonance, there's something inside of you that makes that turning point happen. And she was very clear that, you know, she was out of alignment with what she really wanted in her life, with what the notion of freedom would be in her life. And she listened to that and made a change. You know, she left the corporate world. She took the skills she had built up and she created a, multi-six-figure business from just writing a blog about things she was passionate about. And that story is so beautiful. We've heard it again and again, this, just kind of following the breadcrumb trail of your own excitement, your own interest, your own passion. And in her case, she was down to $18 in her bank account and we just started writing and had a blog that only her mom and her sister read. And then a few years later was training would-be entrepreneurs around the world, living across 70 countries, just living a life of freedom and abundance. And it's really a beautiful story.
Yeah, Natalie has been around, quote unquote, the digital nomad space for quite a while and is really, really experienced and so is widely respected and known in that world. And it's amazing to me how everybody kind of says the same thing. I mean, in different ways and in different worlds, but they say the same thing. Like, she didn't know what she would eventually be doing. She knew she wanted to be an entrepreneur. She knew that freedom was a big theme for her. She knew she was interested in travel. But it's not like she left her corporate job knowing the exact offer and the pricing and when it was going live and any of that. Like, she didn't know any of that. And so many people say that it's not about knowing in advance. It's really about, as Teresa said, putting one foot in front of the other, following the breadcrumb trail. And one thing that she talks about, and I want to highlight it because I think it's so important in this interview, is the notion of serving others. Like, we talk about that in varieties of ways, how to serve. And her entire business model, as she'll talk about very well at the beginning, was based on just having conversations with people and learning what people needed, what would really help them, and then producing that and giving that to them, and then doing that again and doing that again and doing that again. And that has been a through line for her, and it has created some really, really wonderful businesses that have served thousands of people. And what a great mindset to have. How can I serve others? And if you don't know, just ask. I mean, it's a very simple entrepreneurial model, which is to talk to people. And she talks a lot about networking too, so she was very active in meeting people. But just talk to people. What do they need? What do they want? And then produce that and give it to them. So you'll notice that this is probably a shorter episode than usual for us, and that's because there were some, kind of our time was squashed. I think Natalie had some other things she was, some other commitments that she had prior to our call, and they ran over, and now we have to scoot out to pick up our daughter who's with grandma, my mother, so that she can do some things for herself. But anyways, but Natalie is a pro, and she really is an experienced podcaster, and she knows how to answer questions, and she packs in so much brilliant information into her answers. So even though the duration of this episode is probably a little briefer than what we typically produce, the value of the content and the bulk of the content is still very much in there. So anyway, I think we'll leave it at that. We'll be back afterwards with a very quick wrap up, but until then, enjoy our conversation with Natalie Sisson.
Well, great. Well, Natalie, welcome to the Ownstream Podcast. We are thrilled to have you. And I know that Stephen and I, when we were first getting into podcasts and thinking about a location-independent business, listened to your Suitcase Entrepreneur and checked out your blog. So this is awesome to be able to include you in our podcast series. So welcome.
Thank you. It's so neat to be here.
And we know you've been living out of your suitcase, although now you have a home base, but you've lived out of your suitcase as an entrepreneur worldwide, over 70 countries for about 7 years. And you've taught thousands of other people how to create freedom in business and lifestyle. But there was a time before that where you were embedded in the corporate world and not living that life at all. Can you tell us, as a way to get started, about what your life was like maybe it was about 10 years ago before you took that jump and became an entrepreneur?
Now, you know what? Actually, it was 10 years ago this year. Isn't that scary? In about 6 months time from now, it would have been 10 years. It looked totally different because I was in London, United Kingdom. I was working in a really, really big company, actually, that was also a trade union. And looking back, I'm not sure how I got into something like that because it's not the right kind of company for me. Really well paid, really awesome on paper, got to lead up a team, got to create a new office, got to run a project turning doctors into entrepreneurs. So really getting them to think about how they could use the landscape there to be able to do more and get support from the government. And so it seemed so great on paper, but as you know, I think there's something also about England and some certain jobs in the city that are very, very restrictive, very bureaucratic, lots of backstabbing going on, lots of office politics, lots of people who would literally check in at 9 and be out the door at 4:59 p.m. No sort of skin in the game, no thought to what they were wanting to do, no real heart behind it. And it just felt like a lot of people were sleepwalking through life. And it was depressing. And I'm a pretty damn optimistic person. And for the first time in my life, I didn't want to get up and go to work. It was about almost a year in, coming up to a year anniversary in the job. And I took a couple of sick days, which I never do. It's so unheard of for me. And I was like, I'm taking them because I'm just not motivated to go in. It's too depressing. And so I made a call at that very moment to just quit my job because I thought it's not fair on them. It's definitely not right for me. I quit the job and then took off to Canada and went, right, let's start a new life.
And so that decision to go to Canada, what was behind that? Did you know people there or?
A couple of things. I just always wanted to go, really. My dad had sold the Encyclopedia Britannica there when he was a young teenager and traveled the country, which I think is so cool. And he'd always talked really fondly about it. So I was like, okay, Canada, I haven't been. It's a place that my parents had been when they were younger. And also ultimate frisbee, the world championships were coming up in Vancouver, and I had gotten onto the New Zealand women's team to play at world's level, which was amazing. So I figured I need to go there anyway, so why don't I just book a one-way flight and just see if it's for me. So that was pretty much the three reasons. Hadn't been there, a little bit of family connection from the past, and knew absolutely nobody there apart from my cousin's ex-girlfriend, which was a little bit dubious to say the least in terms of the connection.
Well, we have to ask, how'd you fare in the Ultimate Frisbee Championships?
We actually came fifth, which was really fantastic.
Wow, that's cool.
We just lost to the UK, which is a bit frustrating. But yeah, I think fifth for a small country like New Zealand was amazing out of such a large field. And then after that, I certainly knew lots more people, and then just went on to play more Frisbee in Vancouver. It's such a great way to get to know people in a new country and make an instant group of friends. So highly recommend any kind of sport or hobby for doing that.
Yeah, cool.
Oh, beautiful. And, a lot of people, and I know this is your work now or has been your work, a lot of people get really stuck, right, in unhappy jobs, and, they have those feelings you were having about just not wanting to go to work, but they push through it for decades of their lives. Is there, what helped you to do that? Are there some beliefs that you have that you think really pushed you through that? Have you always been a risk taker? What enabled you to make that kind of change when so many people get stuck?
That's a really great question. I think I'm just very, very clear on my values. And if anything ever feels out of alignment, there's a reason for it. And you have to listen to your intuition at that point and your heart. And I just knew myself so well. I was like, why would I put myself through this for 5-10 more years? Yes, I just got a raise. Yes, it looked great on paper. But if I'm not happy, that means everybody else around me is not going to be happy because I'm going to bring them down. And it's just, life's too short to be spending time that way. Plus, I guess I really viewed it as an opportunity to go, okay, well, maybe this is a springboard that you need to finally start your own business, even though I didn't know what that was. And my other thing behind it was, yeah, I'm a little bit of a risk taker for sure, but what's the worst that could happen? I might end up back in a job. But if I don't try, then I'll never know. So it didn't feel like there was actually so much risk in leaving, because the very worst thing, I could have just said, yeah, I went traveling during that time and now I want a new job. So it just, yeah, I think it was very, very aligned with my values to never, ever, ever not be happy and doing fulfilling work.
Awesome. That sounds like a plan. Yeah, I think we've both been there too. And yeah, I think living in alignment is a really great theme to kind of carry through life. And so it sounds like you knew on the horizon there was entrepreneurship for you. How did that begin to happen? Did you just start writing, or when did the idea of starting the business, how did that actually, the specifics of that begin to unfold?
Yeah, it was quite an amusing journey, but I will say the biggest tip that I have for anybody is just to network like crazy. Even introverts, I'm obviously an extrovert. I think I've become more introverted in later life, but just being open to opportunities. And so when I got into Vancouver, I literally knew nobody. I was in a flat, and every day I just go to different events, and there's a lot of networking events in Vancouver for all sorts of things. I was picking business events so that I could meet business people, but there were tech startups, and there were, launch your business evening, and there were just business meetups. And so I would just go to as many as possible. Almost all of them were free. They also fed you and gave you wine, so it was pretty good because I didn't have a ton of money to my name. I didn't have a lot of savings quitting my job, with nothing behind, and I'd also just bought a house in London before I left. So most of my capital was tied up in that. So I really didn't have a lot to live on in Canada, and it's an expensive city in Vancouver. And from that, I actually met my business partner. So I literally, over a cheese board and a glass of wine, said, I'm a homeless, unemployed bum, and I really love marketing and business development. And he said, oh my God, I'm starting a business and I really need your skills. I really don't know how that was my best business chat up line, but it worked. And we went to lunch the next day, and he was serious about it. So fortunately, in that case, he put up the capital for a technology company startup, and I came on board as a co-founder, and we literally started from scratch and built up a customer base, hired some developers, got an app built. It all sounds very simple. This was over the period of 18 or so months, and I just dived into the deep end of entrepreneurship. So I'm really thankful to Daryl for that, because he just gave me a big opportunity, and he did actually pay me a salary, which was great. Not what I'd been used to, but it was certainly something. And so I just sort of jumped into the deep end. I helped get investors on board. I was helping not build the product as a developer, but doing all the customer feedback and the app testing. And then I was charged really with marketing this company with zero budget, because that was my background. So I was learning everything I could about social media. I'd been on social media from the beginning, but not using it for business. I was learning to blog. I was learning around, YouTube videos, just how do you build presence for a company that has zero budget and try and get it out there in this really, really competitive world. So that gave me a really great foot up into that aspect. And while blogging there is when I started blogging for my own personal reasons, just to sort of talk about the journey, because it was so high speed all the time, 24/7, living and breathing it, and thought other people must be going through this stuff. I want to talk about it, but I also want to learn from them. And I used my blog as a vehicle to do what you guys are doing right here with the podcast, is interviewing people who were, smart and successful and doing what I wanted to do. And not saying I'm that person for you, but you know what I mean? Like, I was trying to do that with women entrepreneurs, and especially women founders who were founders in a very tech and male-dominated industry. And that's how it all got going, until my business partner said, your blog seems like it's not in a horrible way. He's like, you put so much passion into that, and you seem to light up when you're doing it, and you're really good at it. Have you ever considered turning it into a business? And I was like, what a great idea back in the day when you could, I think, turn it more easily into a business. And so we parted on really good terms, probably about 4 or 5 months later, left them in really good standing. They hired somebody new in. We still keep in touch. It's really cool. I've still got friends invested in it. And I went off to run this blog, which was not even a business, didn't have an email list, nothing. So that's pretty much how I got into what turned out to be, multiple 6-figure business for the last 7 years.
It's amazing and really inspiring. And I know that I was reading some of maybe chapter 1 to your Suitcase Entrepreneur book, and you talk about, and it's so beautiful and so human. And you talk about the, something like you took another leap there from something that was pretty good, but to something you were really passionate about. Maybe had like $18 in your bank account or something. And you talk about those first.
It truly did.
Yeah. And those first moments of growing your own thing from the blog. Can you talk a little bit about it? Because I know people get stuck, and you write about this too. People get stuck in, I don't have anything to give, or I can't monetize myself, right? Like, how did you take those steps from sort of writing about what you cared about to turning it into a business?
It's a really good question once again, and I think what I ultimately did, looking back on it, was, as you said, monetize myself. So I was writing about topics that interested me, and then I would listen to the community, because back then people used to comment on blogs, and people go, I really love this. Do you have any more on this topic? Or I really love this, the way you did this interview. Can we learn more about this? And so I just listen really carefully and look at what people were valuing as popular or useful to them, and then do more of it and double down. And I was learning so much at the time as well, so I had a lot to share. So I think I was just going over and above and writing all the time. I'd write 2 or 3 times a week. I'd be sharing a lot. I'd share my personal setbacks and also the good things. I was very transparent, as you mentioned, and just kept it down to earth. And then as people sort of kept asking or kept resonating, then I would be like, what else? What else do you need? Are you struggling with these things? And I'd get their feedback on it. And then I went and produced my first product, which was to basically sort of answer that need, which was actually the ultimate entrepreneur's toolkit from memory, and also a social media for entrepreneurs bootcamp, because I ran that as a workshop when I was in Vancouver, a physical workshop. It went down really well, and I was like, wait a minute, if I can hold 3 of these sellout workshops, because people really must be needing this right now. This is back in 2010, so it was still pretty new to a lot of people. I was like, maybe I can turn this into an online program, and that's where I went. And very shortly after that, put together a toolkit of the best tools for online entrepreneurs to use. And both of those went not initially well, I will say, not initially well at all, but I just kept hustling and marketing and trying different things and growing my audience. And over time, they became really good sellers. So that's another thing I think is people give up too easily. Like, had I taken my first attempt at doing that online boot camp with 30 people turning up to a webinar and 1 sale, I would have walked away from that if I'd done those results these days. But back then I was like, oh my God, 1 person wants to buy my course. This is amazing. How can I make it 5? How can I make it 10? And that's exactly what happened. I was just really hungry and wanted to hustle, and kind of life depended on it. And it also had a big why behind it, which was, if this works for me, then I can take this anywhere. Like, I really can take this anywhere and take it on the road. So that was the big why, was really driving that.
Yeah, and it's really cool that it happened very organically. It's not like you started knowing that would be the product, but it was really more about you listening and having a conversation with people, which really resonates. And I'd love to kind of hear maybe a story or two about your digital nomading, because now I think you're in one place, but you know, like, were you still in Canada when you developed this, or did you move any? And maybe talk about kind of the reality of living and traveling and working all as one.
Yeah, so I did. My first product was created, well, actually it was created in the US. So I ran the physical boot camps in Vancouver, then started the process of putting that all online, and did that while on a one-way trip out of there. So I went to the US and started doing it there, literally just recording over the top of my PowerPoints, which I had back then, and turning that into a course and figuring out how to, you know, build a little course site before all these wonderful sites like Teachable came out, where everything had to be done manually. And from there went to Argentina, which is more where I kind of launched it. So it was just, traveling the whole time throughout that. And it was when I got to Argentina, I think, in late December of 2010, that I was like, okay, I'm in a completely new country, new city where they don't speak my language, have to figure everything out for myself, find an apartment, find good places to work. Wi-Fi was pretty non-existent back then. So really just, it was too much of a move in hindsight. Like, it was big enough to be launching my first ever course, and second on top of that, to move to a completely different country with, once again, no friends, nobody there, was just a lot. And I do remember a few nights crying in my bed in my little studio going, what the heck have you done? Like, you're on the other side of the world. You don't have much money to your name, and you certainly aren't speaking Spanish as well as you thought. And it just kind of felt quite lonely. But just things sort of improved from there. And once I'd left Argentina 5 months later, I'd made a really great group of friends. I played Frisbee there. I knew my way around. My Spanish was better. But then I was off to Amsterdam, and I just realized that I could pretty much do this anywhere so long as I had a laptop and some internet. So that was probably the big realization to me, and then just continued to travel more and more and more. And I think your question about how does one do this? Looking back, so many people ask me the whole time, how the heck do you do this all the time? How are you so productive from the road? And I think there are two types of people. I do point it out in my book. Like, you're either going to be really good at this if you're used to change. You can handle change. You can handle the unexpected. You love thinking on your feet. You love being able to manage every single part of your life. Then this is going to work really well for you. But if you love stability and routine, and a beautiful, perfect environment all the time, and everything to be just so, and everything to always be as it is going to be without any hiccups, then it's probably not going to be for you. And I think there's a very specific type of person who would love this and thrive in it, and for somebody else it would be very, very stressful. So it's knowing yourself, really, like what really moves you. But you don't also have to travel like a mofo like I did, and you don't have to be that crazy. And certainly things have improved so much that there's virtually Wi-Fi everywhere. People are much more set up for this. There are location independent services galore. Like, Airbnb didn't exist, Uber didn't exist. Just so much is set up now for people to be able to move around all the time pretty effortlessly.
And was that when you were, working more of a corporate job kind of in one place, was this something that you fantasized about? Like, did you think, like, I know you've thought about, written a lot about, done a lot of exploration of freedom, which is a big endeavor for us with the Ownstream podcast, a big quest for us in terms of helping people to find their own path. Is that something that always kind of stood as a symbol for freedom for you, or is that something that evolved along the way?
Yeah, I think it did. Back then, it was the ultimate in freedom for me. So, if I could just travel anywhere in the world and be able to earn an income while I'm doing it, that to me was like, yep, absolutely the pinnacle of freedom. And that's changed so much now, but for a good 5 or 6 years, that was it. And I think for me now, it's more so, it's not dissimilar, but it's just the ability to do what you want, when you want, with who you want. And that doesn't have to be traveling. It's just the ability to be able to drop everything and do what you want. So that's my version of true freedom. And things have changed a lot at my end, where I just value being on our beautiful property and in the middle of nature, and being able to go on dog walks in the morning and yoga and not start work until whenever I want, or maybe not even work. So different types, right? But at various stages in your life, freedom can mean so many different things. And I think for a lot of people, it's still that ability to travel the world and not have to worry about being in a job or in one location or stuck in an office.
And now tell us a kind of paint the picture of where you live now and your lifestyle now, because it's changed. It's not that you're traveling anymore. And then maybe talk about how that change happened. Why? I can imagine at some point you're probably like, geez, I'd like to be in one place. But maybe share a little bit about that journey to finding your dream home, as it sounds like.
Yeah. It's so different now, but I absolutely love it. I mean, it's still full of freedom. So my partner, well, one, I got a partner, which was so new after I basically went from about 6.5 years of being single, traveling the world, playing ultimate frisbee, running my business, to meeting a wonderful man. We bought an awesome place together. We kind of made a big shift together. We took a chance on each other, got a puppy, got chickens, got a hectare of land, bought this incredible property. Both run our businesses from here. We have a barn and we've turned it into a co-working barn, so we invite other people to come and work with us. I kind of feel like I flipped my model, and rather than me going to visit everybody else and do cool things, I get people from all over the world now to come here. So I just had some friends from the US leave. I had a friend from the UK come here. I've had friends from Australia come here. And we're essentially trying to turn this into a haven, a retreat center, a co-working space, a place to just come and be and work, write, whatever you'd like to do. So it feels pretty amazing. And I wake up every single morning super grateful. I've got views of the mountains, trees, birds, nature. It's beyond incredible. It's like my dream lifestyle. So quite different. And that was actually really just making a decision. I think after 7 years almost full-time travel, living out of a suitcase, I was like, I think I'm ready to just be in one place more often. At least for longer than a week. Just didn't expect it to be this extreme. And we're going to be traveling this year. We've got plans for Australia and Europe and US, but just more time in one place with a beautiful base, exactly where I want to be, doing things I want, surrounded by the people I want to be surrounded by. So it's, once again, just getting really, really clear. I talk a lot about getting clear on what your perfect day looks like. Where would you wake up? How would you be spending your time? Who would you be spending it with? And I've just constantly worked on that throughout my life. And now it's more possible than ever to make that happen, just being a bit more financially free.
I definitely want to talk more about this idea of freedom and your perfect day. I know that, last year you went on a quest for freedom. And I know that's something that you've been exploring anyway over the years. Can you talk about a little bit more? You say that, freedom is a mindset. What is it? What have you learned about freedom? What does it require for somebody to really have personal freedom in your view?
Yeah, I think once again, it's a real clarity in your heart and mind of what is important to you. So the values that you place most important in life. It's also, freedom is knowing your non-negotiables. So I just have some really, really clear boundaries about how I want to spend my time. I don't want to spend it in meetings. I don't want to spend it in offices under fluorescent lights. I certainly don't want to spend it working 12-hour plus days. And so I think most of it starts within your head. And just getting really clear on those boundaries, both personally and professionally, because that's where you then start to put down some, not barriers, but you start to figure out where your time is best spent and how important it is to you, and then you prioritize that over anything else. So you make better decisions based on what's important to you in life.
And the quest itself last year, how did it happen? What did you give yourself certain challenges or questions? Tell us more about the specifics of that. That's very interesting.
Yeah, it is. It didn't kind of work out as I wanted it. So, and partly because of all those life changes. So the quest for freedom that I went on was going to be initially 12 months off, and each month was going to be a different quest. So one was going to be sort of around, understanding meditation and why it's so damn important to your entire life and how it can give you more breathing space and make you pause and reflect before jumping into things, just all the benefits that meditation gives you, decreased blood pressure, general overall happiness, so many things. And then another one was probably going to be about mindfulness, and then there was going to be one around financial freedom and relationship freedom. But why it kind of didn't go to plan is that I only ended up taking 3 months off of my business, so I had a business sabbatical. And during that time, just so many things flipped in my life, and I realized that I was actually living kind of my dream lifestyle now. And I did want to continue working on different parts of my business, but I wanted to change it. So I wanted to move away from the Suitcase Entrepreneur, even though I've adored it and it's given me so much and given so many others so much. But I also kind of came away with last year just being a little more unsure than ever about, wow, what's the next journey? Because in so many levels I'd achieved what I'd wanted to achieve. And so the quest didn't happen quite as it should. And that's why it's happening this year, actually, more so, and just in terms of delving into a lot of those areas that really intrigued me, both personally and professionally, how to have more everyday personal freedom. But the thought behind it was great, and I think it's also a really interesting thing to look at, is to go, everything has to be the right time in life. And so even though I want it to happen last year, I flipped my life 180. It just was so so unexpected. Like, I'm good with dealing with change, but so many things changed that I don't think I could have even had the perspective on, okay, what's 12 months going to look like now?
And I would love to hear kind of the journey of your entrepreneurial journey. We've kind of covered how it began for you, and now you're kind of looking at what's next. Maybe track a little bit kind of the progress of your business and the offers that you made, and also talk about the podcast you had, which I can remember, by the way, listening to your podcast we were in Thailand, and we were driving across. We're going from the Eastern Islands over to the Western Islands. You have to cross the peninsula. And I can remember I had all kinds of podcasts on my phone. I said, oh, that looks interesting. So I listened to it. And I remember putting one of the earbuds in Teresa's ear. So your voice, as I hear your voice, I see us traveling in Thailand, which is sort of like the digital nomad capital of the world. Maybe not anymore, but it was. At least it used to be. Anyway, so tell us kind of more about your journey as an entrepreneur, and then maybe what's on the horizon now for you.
Yeah, that's so cool. That's so cool that you were listening to that. It's neat. Hopefully it was useful. I think the journey has been just really always experimenting with, as I mentioned, listening to what people need, just getting better and better over time at improving what I deliver, how I educate people, how I package it. It's just such an art to learning that, how best to motivate people to learn and in what capacity they learn. So over the years, it's gone from sort of, online books into mini programs, into actual full programs with group coaching and this element of live. And the last year or so, it's been all about how do I get people to actually turn up live and do the work, because we're all so short. Everybody I talk to is like, how are you so busy? We're so short on time. I hate the word busy. I hate it when people approach me and say, I know you're really busy, but I'm like, I'm not busy. I'm like really enjoying life, but you might be. So I just sort of love to be able to help people in that moment do it, not come back and watch 15 videos at a later date, not have access to over 100 resources they're never going to use. Like, what is the one thing that you want to focus on right now and get done? Let's do it right now. So a lot of I call them Freedom Labs, are laboratories where we experiment and do it live, like actually writing a book together. Like one that's about to start today actually is Mastering Your Mindset. And it's like an 8-week live journey of turning up and doing this live. And I think that's really improved my offering. Even if it's not right for everybody, I think it's quite unique because there's not many people out there doing that. There's certainly sort of this formulaic approach that looks like it's worked in the past, and I always want to try and be ahead of the curve on how people are delivering and the best way to get results for people. And then for me personally, this year I'm delving much more into using myself as the guinea pig to understand a lot of these things that I wanted to do last year. So really right now I'm on day 15 of a 30-day yoga challenge. I've been meditating a lot more, but there's even more than that. Like, I'd love to go a lot deeper and look at personal habits and routines and just be the guinea pig and then come back to people and go, okay, here's what's working, and let's delve deeper into why this is, and making it fun for people. So a big thing for me this year that I want to do for the first time in a long time is just create for the sake of creating. And back when I started my business probably 7.5 years ago, that's what I did. Like, I just did what I felt was fun and useful and valuable and taught me a lot, and therefore taught others a lot. And I think there's a certain point, and you might know this yourself, you get to in business where you turn up and do stuff that you think's expected of you rather than what you'd love to do. And so I'm really coming back to going into my creative roots and just creating stuff for fun. So I want to start a vlog. I want to start a couple of vlogs. Actually, one's completely unrelated. It's about my dog. I want to set up an e-commerce store to go along with that and just branch into different areas, and then still be able to teach people about that as you learn more. So for me, this year is very much about fun and creativity and coming back to the true stuff that I really, really want to be doing.
Yeah, I think when Stephen and I were listening to that podcast, it was at a time in our lives where I had just quit a job, and he was trying to convince me that I could start an online business. And he kept telling me, just start writing, and I think about how hard it was for me to get out of the job mentality back then. And maybe you've worked with so many people, I think thousands of people, on creating their own businesses. Can you talk a little bit about like some of the big myths or big stumbling blocks that stop people from making that kind of change, that keep them stuck in the job rut mentality, and maybe some of the things that you do to just bust through those?
Sorry, can you just say that one more time?
Sure.
It just cut out a little bit and I missed a bit of your question. Sorry.
Sure. No, I was saying you've worked with so many people on, on creating their own businesses and location independent online businesses. And I'm curious if you could, from all the work you've done with people, talk a little bit about some of the biggest myths or stumbling blocks that stop people from taking that leap from a job into creating their own business, and some of what you do to bust people through those hurdles.
Yeah, I think some of the biggest myths for sure are you need to be an expert or you need to be fully qualified to do the work that you do, which is rubbish. I'm not saying obviously that you should just be a magician and not know anything about that if you were going to go into that career, for example, but I really love thinking about it as being a leading learner. So you're just a couple of steps ahead of the person who's behind you wanting to learn what you're doing. And so you don't have to know everything, and you obviously want to upskill and constantly be learning, but you don't need to have put in that 10,000 hours. Nobody's looking for the absolute expert in everything. Once you've reached that status, fine, then you can charge a lot more. You can do things on a bigger scale. But there's a lot to be learned from people who are in the trenches right now, doing the work, getting great results. Mind you, I must caveat it with that, not just in the trenches and not getting anywhere, and getting results that people will want to follow that and be part of that. And so there's no sort of magic formula, but you do have to really commit. I was just saying to my sister this morning, who I love dearly, she's a true creative, and she flip-flops a lot because she has an idea and she's going gung-ho, and then she'll be like, oh, wait a minute, there's this other idea. So there's lots of people out there who have resources for extremely creative people who are amazing but don't always stick with their ideas. And so I guess the biggest lesson I've learned over the years is, once you've latched onto something, really fully own it and stick with it for a while and give it the full commitment that you can, because that's where you're going to get the real growth, and that's where people are going to see you as more credible, as more trustworthy, as somebody who turns up all the time and delivers and is always there for them. And people more than ever need people to trust and be committed to them these days. Not all these get-rich-quick schemes. None of these people are this one day and changing the next. Even for myself with transitioning out of the Suitcase Entrepreneur, that's been a longer, slow thing, just because I really want to make sure I'm bringing people across with me. And if people want to go somewhere else, I'm directing them to great people that they can do that with. So I just think there's a lot of value to being really true and sticking with it and mastering the craft. And as you're going, teaching people. It's not rocket science in business. And so it's just really being, as I said, true to that and your values. I can talk about all sorts of mistakes that people make. And probably, as you both know, one of the biggest is just getting out of your own way, and not needing all the courses in the world to buy, not needing to go to all these events before you consider yourself worthy of doing it, but just backing yourself, turning up and taking action every single day.
Yeah, nice. In hearing you, I'm remembering I've started a few businesses myself, and how at a certain point you have to make a decision that you're ready and that you're worthy of this. I think worthiness is something that many people have to come into and own it and step into a place of really owning their power and saying, I'm an entrepreneur. This is what I'm doing, and I'm putting an offer out there. You're one of the real themes, it seems, in your life certainly is freedom. I'd love to know, if all the things that you've tried to kind of activate more freedom in your life, if there was one, like Tim Ferriss talks about the big domino, don't worry about kind of toppling over the final 3 dominoes in the line, but get that first one that knocks them all over. And he calls it the big domino theory. And I wonder, in all of your experiments, everything you've done, if there was one thing a person could do today that would have a lot of leverage, that would open up a lot of freedom potentially in their life, if there was one, what would that be?
I'm looking for the huge answer here. Quite honestly, for me, my biggest inspiration has been Yoda, and that do or do not. There is no try. There are way too many people out there trying rather than just doing. So they're procrastinating. As I said, they're taking yet another course because they don't think they're ready. And I do think it's not the domino effect, but I do just think that people who take action and turn up every single day, day in, day out, are already ahead of 95% of the rest of the people. Even if they don't feel they're doing the best work, even if they're still improving, even if they're still learning, those are the people who are actually going to be successful. And the amount of people who talk a great talk and never actually take any action is incredible in my world. So I think you've already got a huge advantage just by doing. And it doesn't have to be a massive like deal breaker. It just needs to be one step, one foot in front of the other. And it seems so simple. I know we're probably looking for better answers, but quite frankly, it's turn up and do the work.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
It's so great too, because all those like imaginary things that stop people from doing something, like that's something that is within your control, right? It's like taking that next action. And so it's really an empowering message, I think, to everybody who might be wondering how to do this. So it's great. So I think we have 3 questions that we ask at the end of every podcast. So we'll kind of go into those now. The first one is, what book or books up to 3 would you recommend that every human being should read?
Up to 3. You probably had this a lot in here before, but I really still do love Think and Grow Rich. And I also love watching the YouTube series from Napoleon Hill, because it's actually him behind his desk in black and white way back when it was written. Nice. And something about his voice that's just, and the next key to success and untapped. And I just think there's something kind of therapeutic about it, and the lessons still hold true even now. With this absolute clear, like divine, why are you doing what you're doing? And what is this one thing? That is another great book. I really do like The One Thing. It's Jay Papasan, and I think it's Keller. It's just also really good at coming back to, and not dissimilar to Think and Grow Rich, what is this one thing that you were focusing on that everything else that you do will revolve around? And it doesn't mean you're really restricted. It doesn't mean I'm just going to focus on being a person who grows roses, for example, and creates a business out of that, but it's this one philosophy that you have around everything. So I really like books that allow you to focus more on just one thing, as I was mentioning, and cut out a lot of the other stuff. And then I guess another book that really did resonate, and a fantastic TED Talk, is Start With Why by Simon Sinek. People quote it all the time, but there is something really, once again, beautiful about your big why. Not the what, not the who, not the how. If you have the why in place, everything else will come. And all of these books are they have a very simple underlying message, and it is around just, you don't need to know everything up front. You don't need to know what's my calling from day one. But coming back to what I mentioned earlier about your values and being in alignment and knowing in your heart that you're on the right track makes a huge difference. Yeah. What was the other part of the question?
That was it. Those 3 books. That was it. You got it.
Okay, great. The 3 books.
Second question. If you could travel back in time to the day that you accepted that corporate job, and you had
one of the corporate jobs,
the one with the
where the last one,
where you were training the doctors to market themselves.
Yeah.
If you could kind of go back there and have the chance, like say you're walking into the office building, and as I'm saying this, I'm seeing myself walk into these office buildings on these corporate interviews. But what would you tell her? What would you tell the younger Natalie in that moment? What would be your message?
Well, I was going to say get out now, but that's kind of what I did. No, that's not true, because, some of my earlier corporate jobs were brilliant, and I learned so much from them. And every single job that I was in, I can attribute to my success in business. So one thing that I did attempt to do in any job was kind of, once again, own it. So I didn't always think I was the owner of the company, but I did my very best in that role, as if this was me leading the company and I needed this person to be as good as they can be, what do I need to do to step up into that? So I think whatever you're applying yourself to, you might as well give it your absolute best shot. There's no use in playing small, and there's no use in being half-hearted about it. So I would most likely tell myself to carry on with how I was doing, but also probably like, there's the exit door over there. There's better things waiting for you.
Great. The third and last question is, what are you most excited about now?
I'm really excited about, and this may seem strange, but actually going into some new businesses. So vlogging and e-commerce. It may sound really weird, but when you've done something for as long as I have in the personal brand space, I'm really excited about marketing and building something that's not related to me as much. I will still be doing that, but I'm very excited, and I'm excited about the art of just creating more art and creating content that really resonates, especially in a world where there's too much content. So I think for me, it's the challenge behind how do I make this really interesting, fascinating, inspiring, useful, and valuable, but in a really different way. So I'm excited about being a student again, and what, a student in the sense of the word student of life, and learning and applying.
Awesome. That's great. Well, before we let you go, Natalie, let people know where they can connect with you online and if there's anything in the immediate future coming up for you.
I would love for them to come across. I'm at Natalie Sisson on almost everything, Instagram, Twitter, Pinterest, and NatalieSisson.com is my website where my podcast resides and soon to be vlog. And on the upcoming horizon is my second book, The Freedom Plan. So hopefully that'll resonate with a lot of people who've been listening here. And I'm really excited about that. And it will be coming out this year. It's actually being written. So I just want to go back, improve it even more, and get that out to the world.
Awesome.
So there's probably a few other Natalie Sissons in the world who are like, how did I end up with the same name as this amazing marketer? She got my name on every platform.
I love that. I don't know if you know of a YouTube vlogger called Natalie Tran, actually, and she's Australian, and she has this wonderful video where it's like, why am I taken by everybody else? And it was like Natalie Tran 1, Natalie Tran 24, Natalie Tran's a horse. So I think I was very lucky to have it.
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, thanks a lot, Natalie. This has been great. Really, really appreciate your time. And even though we didn't spend a whole lot of kind of time, but you packed it with some really, really valuable stuff.
It's been so much fun. Thank you so much. I loved all the questions.
Thanks, Natalie.
All right, that's it for this week's Ownstream Podcast. Thanks so much for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed this awesome interview with Natalie Sisson. Be sure to check out the show notes for this episode for links to everything mentioned, including her website, social media profiles, links to the books she mentioned, and the other resources we discussed. All of that can be found at ownstream.co/Natalie Sisson. That's ownstream.co/NATALIE SISSON.
Also, please sign up for our weekly tip-off email at ownstream.co and just click the sign up button in the upper right-hand corner. This is where we share each Monday 3 cool things we've learned in the last week in the areas of lifestyle, business, and spirit. This could be an amazing quote, individual, tip, or tool designed to bring you more freedom and power in your life. So definitely sign up for that again at ownstream.co and just click sign up.
Finally, please leave us a review on iTunes. We really need your help in expanding our reach, helping us to inspire more people and spread the amazing ideas discussed on this episode with Natalie Sisson and others too. If it feels right to you, simply go to iTunes, search for the Ownstream Podcast, click ratings and reviews, then click that 5th star and leave us a brief comment on how this episode has inspired you. Thank you so much for considering that. We are very grateful. Also, we're on Twitter at Ownstream and on Instagram, where we post regularly at owned_stream. Thanks so much, and we'll talk to you next week.
Thanks for listening to the Ownstream Podcast. To learn more and connect with us, please visit ownstream.co or follow us on Twitter at Ownstream and Instagram at own_stream.